just relaxed and paying attention.
Well, you should be relaxing and paying attention right about now, friends. You know who they are? That's the Birds. Remember the Birds from the good old days? Well, some of you guys remember that. Welcome back to 21st Century Radio. This is Dr. Bob Hieronimus with my producer, Laura Kortner, and she's an executive producer and research assistant, and is also a PhD in a sense. And also, our engineer is Anita Brockington. Now, our guest is Ted Knorr. He's an advocate for Rap Dixon, one of the best Negro League baseball players, not yet in the Hall of Fame. Plus, we're going to find out what it means that the Negro Leagues have been declared a major league later on. And also find his Rap Dixon page on Facebook with a quick link on the Facebook page for 21st Century Radio. And again, don't miss a show here on 21st Century Radio. Subscribe, share 21st Century Radio on YouTube. It's absolutely free. Are you with us there, Ted?
I'm here.
Well, we're looking forward to this part because mainly I was so excited when I got into this a little bit earlier when I was growing up. And I'm always growing up. Now, here we go. Now, this question I want you to take your time with. It's worth the price of admission alone. Let's hear some Rap Dixon legends. You say there are about a dozen stretching from 1924 to 1944. I was born in 1943, so I just made it in there.
Okay, well, 1924 is a big year. This is the first year the Harrisburg Giants, a team that was 34 years old and the best amateur semi-pro team in the central Pennsylvania, they now become a major league team. They're in the Eastern Colored League. And the strength of their team and the first legend of Rap Dixon is this outfield. According to the Hall of Fame itself, is the greatest outfield in Negro League history. And let me defend that point. They're intact for 4 years. They include a Hall of Famer, and all three positions are manned by one of the dozen best outfielders in Negro League history, because the Hall has 7 in the Hall and 5 remaining on a 2006 ballot. And that includes Charleston, the center fielder, in the Hall, and both Fats Jenkins and Rap Dixon in left and right are on that ballot. So the Hall of Fame has signified 12 outfielders, and 3 of them are in this outfield for 4 years. There is no other Negro League outfield of any real duration that has that same all 3 among the top 12. So I think that makes him the best in the Negro Leagues, although there are 2 outfields I want to mention. St. Louis Stars in the 20s. They have Wilson Reedus and Branch Russell, 2 outstanding outfielders, and they flank the great Cool Papa Bell. And this outfield's together for, I want to say, 4 or 5 years. So They do meet the duration mark, and they do meet the having a Hall of Famer. 20 years later, the Homestead Grays have an outfield, again, spectacular, intact for 4 years. No Hall of Famer here, although they have one should be. They have David Watley and Jerry Benjamin, and their left fielder was their manager, the great Vic Harris. And I just got a comment on Vic. He's borderline Hall as an outfielder. However, he managed, I want to say, around 900 games, now considered major league games. There is no major league manager with a higher winning percentage and at least 900 games than Vic Harris.
Wow.
So Vic Harris, he should be, and he won 7 pennants. So I don't know what more you want from a man on the bench, but he also was a darn good outfielder, and that outfielder, the Grays, was a great outfield. But let's take a look at the outfields that they're competing against in the segregated majors. The first one that comes to mind is the Detroit Tigers of 1913 to 1916. And this outfield is led by their center fielder, Ty Cobb.
Oh, boy.
Flanking Ty is Sam Crawford, also a Hall of Famer, and Bobby Veach. What makes this outfield remarkable and provable, they have more win shares, that's a Bill James stat, for 4 consecutive years than any other outfield in Major League history. So that's one I want you to not forget. At the same time, the Boston Red Sox, this is another 2 Hall of Fame outfield, had the great Tris Speaker in center,
Wow.
Harry Hooper in right, I hope I got that right, and Duffy Lewis in left. Lewis is the only one not in the Hall. And this outfield is together for 6 years. So this is truly an outstanding outfield. The only Major League outfielder that has a 6-year duration other than this one is the Pittsburgh Pirates of 1960. Bob Skinner, Bill Verdon, and Roberto Clemente. But the third outfield I want to bring your attention to is Murderers Row, the Yankees of the 20s. You have Bob Musial in left field, Earl Combs, a Hall of Famer, in center, and then, of course, the great Babe Ruth in right. And those 3 outfields, I feel, are the 3 best of the first 50 years in white baseball. But I picked them in part because of their headliner. Ty Cobb is the first outfielder put into the Major League, put into Cooperstown as an outfielder. Babe Ruth is the second. Tris Speaker is the third.
Mm-hmm.
The center fielder of the Harrisburg Giants, Oscar Charleston, was called the Black Tie or the Black Babe or the Black Spoke. In other words, his nicknames paralleled those 3 great players, the first 3 put into the Hall.
Isn't that amazing?
And Charleston is the first outfielder put into the Hall as a Negro Leaguer that had passed on. Nothing against Monty or Cool, but the fact that they were able to make speeches in Cooperstown aided their being put in before Charlie. Oscar Charleston is simply with only Babe Ruth ahead of him, the second best outfielder, and that's debatable. But I would pick the Babe over Charlie. But that's the only one. Not Ty, not Tris. If he gets challenged by anyone, it's probably by Turkey Stearns. But so that's the anchor of the outfield, and then you have again Fats Jenkins and Rap Dixon surrounding Charlie, and this outfield for 4 years hit 351 in composite. So
it's 351.
Mm-hmm. And one more thing I have to point out: since the integration of the game, beginning with Duke Snyder. Speaking of outfielders now, Duke was a white outfielder with Jackie on the Dodgers. But Duke's the first outfielder put into the Hall, or actually he's the earliest beginning a career under integration. And there's 24 outfielders that have made the Hall. We all know the current ones, Larry Walker's going in this year. But of those 24, 18 would have had to play in the Negro Leagues had they debuted before 47. So 75% of the best outfielders under integration have been what would have been Negro League outfielders. Only 15% of the outfielders in the Hall of Fame prior to the integration of the game are Negro Leaguers. So that's another thing that makes me think the Harrisburg Giants might have been better than those 3 other Major League outfielders I mentioned, because they were all white, whereas the Giants were all black. And again, by merit, 75% of the best outfielders under integration have been Negro Leaguers, or would have had to have been Negro Leaguers. Okay, I think I better pick up the pace. 1927, Rap Dixon with his Winter League team goes to Japan. Now, this was a spectacular Winter League team. They were called the Philadelphia Royal Giants. Their manager and shortstop was a guy named Biz Mackey. You recognize that name.
Of course, one
He's
of the
in
great
Hall of
catchers.
Fame.
Yeah.
Great catcher.
Yeah.
Their ace pitcher was Andy Cooper, who also went in the Hall in 2006.
Oh.
But the star of the team in Japan was Rap Dixon. And he played so well. I'm going to read you a quote here, and I'm getting this from Bill Staples' book called Gentle Black Giants. The 1927 Philadelphia Royal Giants came to Japan 7 years before the Babe Ruth Lou Gehrig tour. And there are many people in Japan who feel that the Nippon Professional Baseball League, one of the best outside of the United States, was formed in large part, due to the visit of these Philadelphia Royal Giants. But here's what I wanted to read. And again, Bill's just quoting NPR and MLB.com that ran this article with this quote. I stand behind the quote, but here it comes. The Emperor of Japan, Hirohito, presented a trophy to Negro Leaguer and Royal Giant Rap Dixon.
Holy cow.
And that was because of his play there. Those 5 tools that I referenced. Rap used to stand on home plate and throw balls over outfield fences. That's at least 300 feet, but I doubt if he was using that foul line, for any shortcut. He also ran the bases. He was measured in 14.02 seconds. That's not the fastest. The fastest is by a guy named Ivar Swanson, unless you believe that Cool Papa Bell's legendary 12-second jaunt. I don't. But Rap's 14.02, just to put that into perspective, Billy Hamilton, the current Billy Hamilton, did it in 13.8. So Rap's 14.02 would still hold up pretty well. That's 3.5 from base to base. And Mantle was one of the first to reach 3 seconds home to first. And, of course, he was a left-handed hitter, so he had a step or two advantage.
Yeah.
But in Japan, Rap made legends that caused the Emperor of Japan to present him with a trophy on behalf of the team. And the trophy does exist in pictures. It's the team's, not Rap's. But I must digress here and just mention 2 witnesses. India Garnett, whom I'm sure is listening. She lives in Steelton. Her grandfather, I think I got that right, was Paul Dixon, Rap's brother. And he also was a major league player. But that family saw the trophy. The trophy passed around the family, and it's been lost to the ages. But India saw that loving cup trophy. But if you don't buy that one, Syke Burnett, a good friend of mine who passed on a year or two ago, he played for Rap in the early 40s, and he saw the trophy too, so he tells me. And he describes it differently. It's not a loving cup anymore. The trophy he saw was very personal, from Hirohito to Rap Dixon. Syke Burnett tells me he saw a statue of a baseball player encrusted in jewels.
Oh, my Lord.
Yes. Now, that one I've never heard from anybody but Syke, but we have Syke on tape. And if the movie of Rap Dixon ever reaches the theaters, you'll be able to hear Syke tell about that trophy. In 1929, we're going to leave Japan. Rap Dixon, on July 20th of that year, was hit by a pitch and hurt so badly he had to be removed from the game, helped to the bench. Now, being Rap, he did take his position in the outfield maybe an inning later, and they bent the rules to let that occur. But he didn't play in the second game of a doubleheader that day and was told not to play on Sunday the 21st. And he didn't play. He was on the bench when the game begins. But this team is losing, and Rap Dixon was a competitor. And he may have had a sickly body, but he had intestinal fortitude. He comes into the game and cracks 3 hits and draws a walk. Now this is the beginning of a 14 consecutive hit streak.
Oh, my gosh.
In the second game of a doubleheader, he cracks 3 more hits. And these hits are off Smokey Joe Williams, a Hall of Fame pitcher. And the first three, I must point out, were against Sam Streeter, an all-star caliber pitcher in 29. And then a week goes by, and to date, there never has been a box score or a game found, certainly not a league game, to interrupt that streak. And the following Sunday, July 28th, in Baltimore, at a place called, and I'm sure you are familiar with this, Maryland Baseball Park.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I figured. Well, Rapp continues his hitting, and he's facing another great pitcher. Phil Cockrell was the manager of Hilldale, and he decided to use his best pitcher, Phil Cockrell. So Phil puts himself in to stop Rapp, and after giving up 2 hits, the streak's now 8, and Cockrell turns the pitching over to his bullpen. And Rapp cracks 3 more hits before this game is over. So now he's at 11. Now, I don't know what the general knowledge was. I do know that I never heard of Johnny Kling getting 12 straight hits in 1902 until fairly recently. The Harrisburg newspapers reported Tris Speaker's 11 in 1920 as being the Major League record, and Rapp Dixon himself knew the Negro League record because in 1924, Pop Lloyd, John Henry Lloyd, who had the record of 11, the first out that Lloyd makes to stop that streak was a fly ball caught by Fats Jenkins.
Huh.
So Rapp knew the Negro League record was 11 straight, and the Harrisburg papers thought the Major League record was 11 straight at the time. Well, Rapp wasn't done. One more game to go. He cracks 3 hits in the second game of that July 28th doubleheader to give him 14 straight hits and 2 walks, 16 straight reaches. That 14 straight hits has not been even approached since. 3 guys have 12 in the majors. Rapp's 14 hopefully will hold up under scrutiny as a Major League record for consecutive hits. The 16 is a modern Major League record for consecutive reaches, tied in the late 50s by Ted Williams.
Oh, boy,
this is
Ted
Hall of
Williams.
Fame stuff.
Yeah.
1930, I'm going to give short shrift here.
Let's take a break now, and then we'll come back to it. Is it okay? All right. My boss says it's okay, and we got to do it. Okay. Our guest, of course, is Ted Knorr, and I'm learning one thing after another, very deep, especially in these areas of which I have had very little time after trying to get a number of players into the Hall of Fame. And I'm so glad we're having Ted on tonight. We'll be back with him. Plus, he'll also find his... oh, by the way, I mentioned this last time. Find his Rapp Dixon page on Facebook with a quick link on Facebook page on 21st Century Radio.
My name is Stanley Glenn from the Philadelphia Stars baseball team of the Negro National League. This is 21st Century Radio, and I'm very privileged to be in this spot.
Swing, batter, batter, swing, batter, batter, swing, batter, batter, swing. Swing, batter, batter, swing, batter, batter, swing, batter, batter, swing.
Hey, welcome back, 21st Century Radio, with our guest, Ted Knorr. And we're swinging our bats here with Rapp Dixon. I just hit about 460. And Rapp was hitting somewhere in the 450, something like that. Is that correct?
Yes, his best year is, I think it was 415, but I could be off.
Well, you're probably right, and I'm probably wrong.
I know. I wouldn't go quite that far.
Oh, okay. All right. Then you were wrong, and I'm right.
Just looked it up.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry to report that I was right.
Okay. All right. Now, by the way, I'm getting all excited here, but where we left off here? Legends.
Okay. Yes. And I'm going to give short shrift here. July 5th, 1930, Yankee Stadium opens its doors to the Negro Leagues. 7 years earlier, Babe Ruth hit the first home run in Yankee Stadium, and it's been forever known as the house that Ruth built. Well, on July 5th, 1930, you already know who did it. Rapp Dixon hit the first home run by a Negro Leaguer in Yankee Stadium, and I call it the house that Dixon rehabbed. That's a good piece of poetry there.
Yes, it is. And it makes it fun. Especially
1932, Charleston again, showing how much he liked Rapp. He already had Josh himself, Judd Wilson, Judy Johnson, and Willie Foster on the Crawfords. And Satch, who am I kidding? And now the last piece of the puzzle, he brings in Rapp Dixon. So Rapp Dixon is on the first great Pittsburgh Crawford team. And in fact, only Josh outhit him, arguably, that year. 1933, the Negro Leagues, the same year the Major Leagues did, they start with an all-star game. The fans vote the team, and Rapp is voted to the very first East-West Classic, and he outpolls both Bullet Rogan and Satchel.
Wow.
And Satchel Paige, yes.
Oh.
And as again, serendipity would have it, him and Charleston, he's on second, and Charleston's on first. They pull off a double steal. It's the first steal in the All-Star Game's history. He's elected again in 1934, but as we'll see in a few moments, he was actually hurt badly and probably didn't deserve to go statistically in 34. But he outpolls Josh Gibson, Buck Leonard, Ray Dandridge, Judy Johnson, and Ray Brown in that election. Overall, he was an All-Star 6 times, only twice in the East-West Classic, but 6 times named by, say, Composey or Rollo Wilson, or in the case of the Classic, the fans. Now we get to his pivotal year. 1934, him and Josh travel to Puerto Rico. Josh leads the league in the Winter League in homers. Rapp leads it in steals. And then a team called Concordia needs a player. One of their young stars, John Mize, a future Hall of Famer.
Johnny Mize. Oh, boy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big John has to leave to go to spring training of the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, he wouldn't debut in the majors for another 2 years, but he had to leave Concordia, so they want Josh. And Josh won't come without his buddy, so they get Rapp. This Concordia team had Martin Dihigo, Louis Aparicio, Sr., and Tatilio Vargas, also in the outfield. And Rapp hit .381, and they went on to win the Caribbean title that year.
A measly .381.
Measly .381. Now, here's where there's a puzzle here. We don't know when Rapp got hurt, but we knew he got hurt over the winter. He hurt his back terribly and never was the same player. Now, unknown to the baseball world, of course, was that injury. I have to give you one more Oscar Charleston plug. In February of 1934, Rapp, having left his Crawford team, he wanted him back. He offers Cool Papa Bell to the Philadelphia Stars for Rapp Dixon.
Oh, my. Oh, my.
Now, here's another compliment. The Stars, Ed Bolden and their manager Webster McDonald, they don't think Cool's good enough price. They ask for the young 20-year-old catcher, Josh Gibson.
Oh, good Lord.
So the pecking order there, according to some pretty good judges of talent, Gus Greenlee, Oscar Charleston, Ed Bolden, Webster McDonald, is Josh Gibson, Rapp Dixon, and then Cool Papa Bell. Okay, now we move on to the regular season of 34. Unfortunately, Rapp is not playing much, but he is doing something great that you know all about, and Leon himself told me about it. He is Leon Day's first manager as a pro, and I met Leon the same day. I didn't meet you, unfortunately, Bob. I heard you speak, though, at Pratt Museum. If you know the year, I'd love to know it. It had to be 91 or 92. But it was a great meeting, and you gave a great presentation. I think it might have been on the ballparks. If not that, it was on the Black Sox. But Leon and I got the chance to talk because Paul Dixon gave me his phone number, Paul's phone number, to give to Leon, and that put me on a mission to talk to him. And Leon said Rapp was the best man for that job, the job of his first manager in the Negro Major Leagues. He wouldn't comment as a player because he claimed he hadn't really seen him. But years later, I see a book, I think it's called Cool Papa and Double Duty. And in it, Leon gives, I'm sure he did this often, but one of his versions of his all-time team, and he puts Rapp in the outfield.
Ah.
So I love that Leon Day. I think he was a good judge of talent. And Sabre, in their scouts book, they credit Rapp Dixon with actually being the scout that signed Leon. Now, I don't know if that's entirely accurate, but Rapp was his first manager, and I was privileged to talk to Leon about Rapp.
Wow, that's a real important piece of knowledge there.
Yes, I think it is too.
One thing
Sorry?
before you move on anymore,
Mm-hmm.
Oscar Charleston. Could you describe this man?
Oh, well,
I mean, when I think of a baseball player, I don't think of Oscar Charleston, even though I think he was one of the greatest. But I mean, he was a very large guy.
he's about 5'9", 190 during his prime outfield playing days. He was a great manager. I think he's second team on the Courier poll, and some people think he was the greatest manager.
Yeah,
he's a great player, and his stats speak for themselves. And Bill James ranks only Ruth and Wagner ahead of him, and I might dispute Wagner in terms of the segregated era. Joe Poznanski, I think sees it the same way. He just gave his top 100 out last year. But Charleston is also a great scout. He's the first Negro Leaguer to move into scouting for a major league team when Branch Rickey signs him to ostensibly scout for the Brooklyn Brown Dodgers in '45. So Charleston is instrumental in the integration of the game. So that's a pretty good triple play right there, player, manager, and scout. And it's as a scout that he's making his judgments on Rapp Dixon. And again, he names Rapp as the all-time center fielder that he ever saw. Is that enough about Charlie?
Yes, I just always have thought of him as one of the most intelligent of the players.
Yes.
And well-read, et cetera, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well-read, and he hung with the upper crust. He did not finish high school, but he married a professor, his wife,
I forgot that.
and a daughter of a preacher, and he was a high society lad, or let's put it this way, he could cross those thresholds. He wasn't bashful with whom he hung with. Yeah. And but his book, and Jeremy Beer, if you want, I think he'd be a great interview. He just published his book on Charleston, and he visited Harrisburg, so Jeremy would be a great guest.
Maybe so, Maybe so.
Let's wrap up Rapp's legends here so we can get on to talk a little bit about what Major League Baseball did last December.
Okay,
1935. Again, Rapp's career is winding down, but somehow he sucks it up. Martin Diego, who was his teammate on Concordia in '34, is competing with the Crawfords for the second-half title of the Negro National League. They had a losing record in the first half, but they add Rapp, and he has a great second half, and the Cubans do too, and they beat out the Crawfords, forcing a playoff in '35. Well, if this is going to be a swan song, it's going to be a great one. Rapp hits .421 in the 7-game World Series. His on base is .500, his slugging is .579, and that's better numbers than the Crawfords' Charleston, Gibson, Bell, and his teammate Martin Diego.
That is really
if they would have given away a Corvette, Rapp Dixon would have won it in '35. 1937. Here's where these legends become truly legendary and not necessarily historical. 1937, you remember, is the year when Gibson, Bell, and Page all bolt from the Crawfords to play for General Trujillo, the leader of the Dominican Republic. And they play under lock and key there, and they really better win, and they do. But when they come back, they're suspended from the Negro Leagues.
Oh.
Posey makes an exception for Gibson, and he returns to Homestead, Posey claiming that Gibson had told him he was going. But Page and Bell and, I want to say I'm leaving Chet Brewer, I think. Don't hold me to that. But they're all suspended, so they barnstorm like Bingo Long. But they need a manager. And my friend Dr. Revelle, Dr. Leighton Revelle, who's the person who filled the Negro Southern Baseball League Museum with artifacts, he tells me he saw the application for the Denver Post tournament, and Rap Dixon was the manager.
Oh.
Now, my only other evidence for that is Hallway's book. When he interviews Cool Papa Bell, Bell talks about the only time he ever got into a fight on the ball field, and his third base coach, which could well be the manager, Rap Dixon, pulls him out of the fight. And the other piece of evidence, Rap does appear in box scores in Denver on the team, and I have to tell you, Rap was 1 for 9 that year on the Crawfords.
Oh, wow.
Yet he's with them all year long. So what I'm saying, I don't know if he was the manager of the team. I believe he was. Dr. Revelle's good enough for me. But I don't know how he could be on the team if he wasn't the manager, getting only 1 hit and 1 successful sacrifice fly. That was all he produced for the Crawfords in 37. So that's quite a legend. Managing the Satchel Paige All-Stars, the trio All-Stars, to the Denver Post tournament in 37. 1942, I only got 2 to go, so I'll get these done and we can talk about Major League Negro Leagues. But in 1942, Rap's managing a Harrisburg Giant team, no longer a major team, not even in the league. But he has 3 white players on the team. And he speaks of integration in the papers. He knows it's coming, and he's, once again, at the forefront. In 1943, he's the business manager of the Harrisburg St. Louis Stars. And once again, they're back in the major leagues for the first time in 15, 16 years. Harrisburg's going to be in the Negro National League. But what do they do? And I'm sure Rap deserves some of the credit as their business manager. They leave the league and tour the country playing Honus Wagner and his team and Dizzy Dean selling war bonds. Remember, this is 1943. So that's a great sacrifice there. Leaving the baseball league with FDR's blessing. Baseball did not stop during the war. But the Harrisburg Stars left the National League to sell war bonds. One more legend. There are 35 Negro League personages in the Hall of Fame. Rap played with or for 25 of them. And I don't know of anybody not in the Hall that has as many or more Hall of Fame teammates. So I think I'm done with Rap.
Well, you're done just at a time when we need to take a break. That's rules and regulations, 506 of the Penal Code. We'll be back soon, very soon, with our guest, Ted Knorr.
Swing straight and true and follow through. Don't be afraid, whatever the call.
Welcome back to 21st Century Radio. I'm Dr. Bob Hieronimus. Our guest is Ted Knorr. And we're ready with this question. Were you surprised late last year when Commissioner Manfred announced that the Negro Leagues were being considered a major league? And how did you feel about it?
Okay, well, I was surprised by the timing. When I woke up that day, it was not on the top of my mind, especially during this terrible year we were having with this pandemic. However, I did know of the thought, and once Major League Baseball announced, which they did in a Ben Lindbergh column earlier that year, that they were thinking about it. I don't think it would have been possible, particularly in 2020, for them not to follow through with the right thing. So I wasn't surprised that it happened. I was surprised that it happened on that marvelous day, and December 16th was definitely the best day of 2020.
That's the way I felt anyway, too.
Yep.
It's taken such a long time, but it came so
Yep.
quickly after it looked like we weren't going to get there for one reason or other. And so, where do we move from there?
Well, first, it wasn't universally applauded.
Of course.
But I was very happy that most, that to my ears, of the disagreement came from Negro League supporters, criticizing it being late, but of course the alternative was for it to not happen at all. Yeah. And they criticized, by what authority does the Major Leagues have to declare the Negro Leagues a major league? And I'm in sympathy with that thinking, but it was the same authority that 50 years earlier the Major Leagues designated 6 segregated white leagues as the major leagues, and did not even consider, because I've asked officials, did not even consider the Negro Leagues in 1969. So whether you like it or not, they not only had the authority, but they used it to the detriment of the Negro Leagues. So I don't think they're redeemed yet, but I hope they get there. The Negro League players, they already knew they were Major League, but it's nice to get the accolade. And it doesn't forgive the sins, but I don't think that was the intent of the Negro Leagues. So where do we go from here? Well, there were 2 announcements that day, and a third left hanging. Number one, they announced that the Negro Leagues were indeed a major league. That meant that 6 white segregated leagues were going to be joined by 7 Negro Leagues. So now there's 13 major leagues, and that's great. If the Hall of Fame is going to be an educational institution, this helps them educate what was going on in baseball and in the country in the first half of the 20th century. But, and the second thing, and I don't mean to poo-poo this, the integration of the stats into the Major League Baseball canon is also a good thing. And because of the work of Larry Lester and Dick Clark and the Sabre Negro League Committee and Seamheads, and in the future Elias Sports Bureau, as they iron these stats out, we're going to be able to compare not just the stars, but Mark Belanger's a good example. Mm-hmm. We're going to be able to notice Jakey Stevens of Hilldale was the Mark Belanger of the Negro Leagues. Spectacular glove, but not much of a bat, although they both could come through under pressure situations. But this is part of what we've missed with the Negro Leagues. The legends are wonderful, but being told that someone's faster than the speed of light only goes so far, and it actually served, in my opinion, to caricature the Negro Leagues and allow Sons of Guns, I cleaned that up there a little bit, Bob, but Sons of Guns to dismiss it. Mm-hmm. Where now when you see that Josh Gibson, he might not have hit as many home runs as the Babe because of the number of games they play in league games, but his rate is faster than, nobody has a higher rate of home runs during the segregated era than Josh Gibson other than the Babe. I was surprised when I looked at that because I thought Jimmy Fox probably would have been number 2, but he's not.
Oh.
Josh Gibson is second. 5.9% of his plate appearances are home runs. And these are the kind of things. Also, Leon Day. He'll now become the second pitcher to have a no-hitter on opening day. We already talked about Rapp. He's going to be the record holder if he passes muster, because they are going to scrutinize these things, with 14 straight hits. Vic Harris is going to be the winningest manager, percentage-wise, for guys with more than 900 games managed. So that's a big thing. But the third announcement that didn't happen, and this is frustrating because it's about what I've spent the last 2 hours talking about. On December 16th, the major leagues were joined by their historian John Thorne, by Bob Kendrick of the Negro League Baseball Museum, by the Elias Sports Bureau, by Seamheads, by BaseballReference.com. But the National Baseball Hall of Fame was not represented, at least I'm certainly not aware if they were, at that announcement. And that's the third announcement that has to happen. More Negro League baseball players need to be put into the Baseball Hall of Fame if they're going to do their job of educating the public about baseball between 1900 and 1946.
Well, they certainly have the material, the Negro Leagues certainly have the material to put in another 10 or 15.
Yep. And I respect that answer, but I would double it.
Okay, well, do you want to take 30 or 40?
Yes.
Okay.
And here's why.
Right.
15% of the players in the Hall under segregation are Negro Leaguers. 43% of the Hall since Jackie would have had to been Negro Leaguers or non-white. I'm not saying you got to match. It would take 70-some players to match. I'm not requiring that. There's other factors involved. In fact, maybe it should be 80 or 90. I don't want to be limited by that number, but I know 15% certainly needs to go in. And if they want to take a shortcut, there's 22 personages on the ballot from 2006 that they could put all in. And if they don't like that, there's 4 players on the Centennial team picked by the Negro League Museum in conjunction with a private sector group, and I can't call the name, but Jay Codwell does an excellent job piloting it. And the 4, I just want to name these 4 names, that are on the All-Century team that are not in the Hall. There's only 4. Dick Redding and John Donaldson as pitchers, Buck O'Neill as the manager.
Buck O'Neill, yeah.
And there's one position player, Bob, and I think you know who that was.
One position player?
One position player, not in the Hall, on the Centennial team. I hope you've been listening to me for 2 hours.
Oh, you... All right. Rap Dixon, is that the guy you're talking about?
Yes, it is.
Well, of course it is.
He's the only position player on the Centennial team, again, endorsed by the Negro League Baseball Museum, not in the Hall of Fame.
Well, that should certainly go a long way in assisting the situation of getting them into the Hall of Fame, wouldn't you think?
I think so.
And especially with all the other things that you brought up in regards to the kind of players these guys were. And, you know, this is so exciting in many ways, because when I got involved in this in about 1990, or no, just before that, somewhere around there, just to bring this title, this idea up about the Negro Leagues used to cause so much trouble with, and the way I learned a great deal about people that are just biased in regards to skin colors, which unfortunately, I'm being an artist. Artists don't live in cultures in which you worry about whether you're colored white, black, green, or red, anything. You know, the thing is that when you're doing work, the quality of the work is what you're looking at, not the color of the skin, which I think most other artists or anyone who is a creator realizes how difficult, especially when you're in a place like a city of Baltimore, for artists to even exist. Because of not just the cost of the materials, but unfortunately, there just is not enough interest in the other areas, other schools, etc., to get to what being an artist is really about. It's not doing the same thing over and over again. You know, like what we got now going on is more or less you find a kind of pattern that really works out, and you succeed at that, and you take that pattern and then you explore it forever and ever and ever. That's not creating. That is just stealing from yourself, and it's one of the things that I just better stop at that. Talk about that. What did you
you're
say?
on a roll.
How did he get the nickname Rap?
Oh, yes, I'm glad you asked. According to Jim Riley, it's as they came up north on the Great Migration from Kingston, Georgia, to Steelton, Pennsylvania. And hello to both communities tonight. But they cross a river called the Rappahannock in Virginia.
Oh.
And Riley says that Rap had a fascination with that river, and that's how he gets the name. However, Ches Washington, writing in the Pittsburgh Courier, says what we would all guess. During high school, the way he hit the ball, that's where he got the nickname. So given the choice between the two, there might be some romance in the Rappahannock, but I tend to believe the sports writer who got it from Chappie Gardner, who I mentioned earlier. So that's where Rap got his nickname, and it's a marvelous nickname for the 21st century.
It certainly is. And with that, we are out of time. I've really enjoyed this, Ted. Thank you for knocking on my door to make sure this happened, because I really learned a lot. See you next week on 21st Century Radio.